And five. Hey, everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome back to the Santita Jackson Show, AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. Let's talk about former FBI Director James Comey and 8647. What does that mean? Hmm. Some people called it a weird social media post, and the Washington Post said, well, perhaps they're infringing upon, the Trump administration are infringing upon the free speech rights of the former FBI director. What do you think? I want you to reach out to me at the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel, but I want you to go on Blue Sky. Matt Sowell on Blue Sky, I see you, I see you, I see you, and I'm sending you so much love. He's up there at AM 950 Radio, and you have connected with me on Blue Sky. You make comments on the show every day, and I want you to know I see you. And I wanted to acknowledge you on the air, so I'm sending you so much love. Blue Sky, santitajackson.bsky.social. And I am on the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel, which is where Bernadette is right now. She's here first. And the Santita Jackson and Friends Facebook page. That's the only page where I can accept friends. You all did you go to Santita Jackson? It's so confusing. But please go to Santita Jackson and Friends and at Santita J on X. At Santita J on X. What was happening with FBI Director, former FBI Director James Comey, 6'8"? He is known to be a Republican who has protected some Democrats, right? But then he did come out and he made an assertion during the 2016 campaign that many people felt buried Hillary Clinton's campaign, an investigation. So he's kind of an interesting fellow. But what is not really up for debate is what 8647 means. You know, 8 feet long, 6 feet deep. Well, that's the size of a burial plot. 47th President of the United States, Donald Trump. And many people are saying that uh, as he walked on the beach and took a picture of these seashells, that someone uh, put in the formation of 86-47. They called it a weird social media post. What do you think about that, everybody? Was it weird or was it telling? And he's being questioned by the Secret Service, according to reports. What do you think? I will just say this, Colleen Rowley. Of course, really a hero for all of us, really a great patriot who wrote this famous memo that, well, the establishment, it got you into trouble with them, but you were saying, wait a minute. 9/11, well, it didn't have to happen. There were some intelligence failures, and I want to let the American public know what happened here, as from my perspective, what I've seen. Well, you come from that world, and I need you to help me to understand what this is, because I will say this coming from the Dr. King camp. You know, my parents came out of the Southern Christian Leadership Council. My father and mother were his staff members. They didn't, people say, I marched with Dr. King. No, they were his staff members for $75 a week that they had to raise. And so the harassment of Dr. King by the FBI is not something that they just saw. It's something that they had to deal with themselves. They were all surveilled. And the FBI did send threatening letters to Dr. King, sent letters that were meant to destroy his family to his wife. And they've done so much to so many other people. So when a former FBI director seemingly calls for the assassination of a president, or certainly to eliminate him or to do away with him, it's concerning. Everyone, I tell you, I call balls and strikes. I do have a point of view, but I always want to be fair. And a lot of people in this space, Colleen Rowley, they say a lot of things, but they've not had to live with the repercussions of what they've said. My father and mother were willing to pay the price. So I know that there are consequences to everything that you say, to everything that you do. And so As someone who also lived under the threat of assassination every single day of my life, I never ever, up until maybe recently, I never ever knew a day, Colleen Rowley, in which I thought my father would be alive at the end of. Just never knew that. So I'm feeling some kind of way when it happens to anyone. When George Wallace was shot, my mother, and I was about 7, my mother had me sit down and we prayed for him. She explained what happened. And because I was so aware, even at that age, because I had seen so much, she said, we must pray for him because, he's got a wife, he's got a family. And given the kind of work that your father does, this is something that could happen. She was dealing with it as gingerly as she could. She said, this is something that could happen, and this is the price you pay for speaking out. And I knew who George Wallace was because he was discussed at my table. But you still didn't want him to die. Him getting shot was a horrible thing. It was a horrible thing. So you helped me to understand what this is, should he be investigated? What's this free speech? Let me just start with what you think it is.
Okay.
Here I just had to say all of that because the story has been very disturbing to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, my insights are very complicated. They are all over the map. You could say good, bad, and ugly, because it's not one way or the other with this situation that we have. And your reference to the partisanship at the very beginning, I think, was very spot on, because Comey, you're right. If you go back in that first Trump election, he was accused of having helped elect Trump.
Mm-hmm.
And then, because at the last minute, maybe he was, I don't know if he was right or wrong about this, because they did find these additional emails that had not been examined or investigated at the tail end of the campaign. He had previously exonerated Hillary Clinton, and people criticized him for that. So early in the summer, he exonerated Hillary Clinton for her use of emails, whatever. And he was criticized for that. Then they find more at the end of the campaign, and he reopens it. Then he's criticized by the other side. The bottom line is Comey, as a result of that, but also later on what he does, he ends up having burned his bridges with both sides of the partisan camp. And you see that guy now writing his books, staging his pictures on Twitter to look like he's, sorry about that.
No, it's all right.
You see him doing what he's trying to do now is restore his legacy. I think he's probably a bit jealous of Mueller. By the way, Mueller and Comey are two peas in the pod. I actually, the last couple of years of my career, I worked under Mueller. And Mueller, they turned into a hero. And for a little while, Comey and Mueller were both seen as heroes when they stood up to the Bush, to Ashcroft. Not to Ashcroft. Ashcroft was in his hospital room, and Gonzalez, who was the Bush's attorney, he came over to try to get Ashcroft, sick as he was in the hospital room, to sign off on the umpteenth emergency order. So after I'm kind of skipping around here, but I think the history is important because it shows why Comey is doing what he's doing, and it shows why Trump is doing what he's doing. So going back in history, the reason that Comey even got a national profile, this is the reason that shot him up into this situation of being well known. It's why he later was named FBI director, is there was this incident several months, maybe even slightly a year plus after 9/11. John Yoo, who was one of the main attorneys in the Office of Legal Counsel after 9/11, wrote a series of memos essentially establishing martial law. They said we can't have the Bill of Rights, the freedom of press and freedom of speech have to take the back seat because now we're in war. We can, he wrote a whole series of memos. John Yoo is known for having wrote the torture memos, but he did a lot more than that. And these memos that were written to DOJ secretly, no one knew it, secretly only maybe 3 weeks, beginning 2 or 3 weeks after 9/11. Well, one of those memos said that they could monitor, mass surveil the American people. No longer do the Fourth Amendment, search and seizure, that doesn't apply anymore. John Yoo gave them permission. And the way he gave them permission was through what he calls emergency powers. John Yoo is known for the imperial presidency, that when you are in war, you get these special, and by the way, Trump is copying this now, imperial powers that you can say it's an emergency. And you see Trump copying that with the deportations. It's an emergency. We're in war. We can round up the Venezuelans, whatever. So Trump is copying what John Yoo wrote for George Bush in that very first weeks after 9/11. So they were getting Ashcroft, the attorney general, to sign off every 90 days on an emergency order to do illegal mass surveillance that would normally be illegal unless you say it's martial law. And I don't know how many he signed. Ashcroft signed quite a number of these 90-day emergency orders. Well, finally, Ashcroft had an operation. He was in the hospital, gallbladder, something very serious. And the thing was going to lapse. The 90 days was going to lapse. And so Gonzalez was heading over to the hospital room to get him to sign. And Mueller and Comey heard about it. And they showed up in the hospital room to tell Ashcroft, don't sign it. At this point, there's no longer an emergency. I want to say about a year after 9/11. How can we say this is getting very, very thin to keep saying that it's an emergency? And they got Ashcroft not to sign. Well, no one knew about this little incident until also, I don't know how long, at least a couple, 3, 4 years, 5 years later. And then there was this moment when Comey was testifying and he told the story to make it look like, oh, I was legal. I care about the law. I stood up to Gonzalez and we did not go with these illegal things that were happening after 9/11. Now, there's more to the story. I wrote an article about this and other things. When Comey was I'm trying to think. No, it was when Mueller was seen as a hero for Russiagate investigation. And they made Mueller look like Sherlock Holmes. They put him on the cover of magazines with the little hat on and the whatever. And they made him look like Sherlock Holmes. He was so great an investigator. Completely not true. And I wrote an article for Huffington that was entitled, Comey and Mueller are not heroes. And I stand by that. Okay, they may not be of all of the FBI directors, including J. Edgar Hoover and others. I mean, I don't think that maybe they were the absolute worst. But on the other hand, they're not heroes either. And all of essentially the liberals and the Democrats who I thought for decades hated. They obviously, because of J. Edgar Hoover and whatever, they hated the FBI. Like the CIA and the FBI were considered enemies of the liberals. Well, all of a sudden, you get to this Russiagate thing, and now all the liberals went, and that, like I said, they made Mueller into Sherlock Holmes. All of your liberal press, lionized not only Mueller, the FBI, but also the CIA. The Brennan became the talking head on the liberal TV shows, etc. So it's been an incredible.
What is that about?
Well, you know what it's about? It's about manipulation, and it just shows you that you can manipulate people, especially if you control the media. And you have these stories and these narratives and Russiagate was the narrative that flip-flopped the CIA and the FBI. And by the way, the partisanship, the Trump derangement.
But see, isn't that dangerous, the partisanship?
Oh, it's all, and that's why, again, I'm trying to use. I'm going to show or try to. My insights are based on what you said about the partisanship, because again, the actual situation is quite complicated, and it's good, bad, and ugly. It's for Comey, for Mueller, all of them. It's good, bad, and ugly for all of these people who get into power, and they're in power, and they're vying with other power mongers, and there's no good guys. I will say there's no good guys in this whole cabal. However, what people want to think is their leader, and if it's their political party leader, but it also could be religious leader, national leader, all kinds of things. We have all the social psychology experiments. People do tend to believe and trust their own leader. That's why in the Milgram experiment, people will actually press a button to give an electrocution shock to somebody else if a guy in a white coat who they trust tells them to. So this is human nature, and it gets manipulated by these politicians and whatever. But going back to Comey, going back to him, he ends up on the short stick of both partisan because of what happens with this lead up to the 2016 election. He ends up on the short stick with both parties. And so what he's done.
Can you go back and explain what he did in 2016?
Initially he was, I think, very much on the, partisan. He was more favoring Hillary Clinton, and perhaps she should have gotten some punishment or some more. At the very least, you see also the misuse of what is it now? Oh gosh, what the Trump people have used, Signal. Mm-hmm. Okay, so these rules about what media can be used to communicate, and as we talked before, the only real secure way of communicating with everyone that you want to communicate with is to go into a lead enclosed space. It's lead enclosed, and it's called a SCIF. And if you're a judge even, or looking at national security, or you're the Secretary of Defense that is giving a secret order, you're supposed to go into a SCIF. When the FBI presents its secret affidavits in order to monitor someone, to surveil someone for national security, guess what? They have to go into a SCIF with the judge. So there is no signal communication with a judge. There's no electronic, there's whatever. And you can't even do it in the office of the judge. For a regular criminal surveillance order, you can go into the judge's chambers. I went into judge's chambers with Title III warrants all the time, and they read them and whatever. And it's just a regular office, not lead enclosed. But if it's for national security, these secret places, they built them all after 9/11. They built SCIFs all over the place too. They're all over, and they're lead enclosed. Now but guess what? Our government cannot function. To be honest, the Secretary of Defense and in Hillary Clinton's defense, no one can function this way in going, everything is secret and we have to go into a SCIF to talk. The old Get Smart show where the cone of silence came down. I mean, it's a ridiculous, antiquated way of doing business. So guess what? They have all gone now to communicating in less secure ways. In all fairness to Hillary Clinton, that's what she was doing, but I don't think she was the only one. Bottom line is Comey exonerates her for this. And, and her election's going on fine. Everyone thinks she's going to win. Comey thinks it'll be fine. All of them think it's going to be fine for them in national security because, in all fairness, Hillary Clinton was really known as the war hawk. She had started the bombing of Libya based on lies. She and Samantha Power and others, she even went against the Secretary of Defense to start the bombing of Libya. I mean, she was well known that she was going to be solid military industrial complex, war, national security, more money to national security for the FBI. Everybody wanted her, a lot of people wanted her to win. Okay, so then they do find these extra email things at the end, and Comey says, well, I got to be fair. I got to look like I'm nonpartisan. So he launches this reinvestigation. And then, of course, she loses. Now, the Democrats.
This is days before the election, right?
Yeah, it's not long. I think it's a few weeks, maybe a couple of weeks.
Like 2 weeks.
2 weeks, yeah. He put people working day and night in a special room. He thought we can get it done before the election, and they did get it done, but it didn't. Again, the Democrats blame him for this last minute, and certainly it could have played a role. It certainly could have played a role. No one will never know. No one will never know if that was the thing that led Trump to win. Of course, now you see Comey is just caught in these political wins, and again, I'm now on the level of feeling sorry for him. And by the way, read my Huffington Post. Comey is not a good guy. He's done all kinds of terrible things, and I don't feel that sorry for him. I'm just trying to explain that he gets caught up in this partisan one way and the other. When he gets blamed by the Democrats for having elected Trump, he then is trying, behind the scenes, him, McCabe, and all the other FBI high-level people like Strzok, they are doing what they can to undermine and take out Trump. And that's where this whole Steele dossier, by the way, I'm just going to stop here. Remind me, Steele dossier. I just want to say something about the fact that there are important questions to be asking Comey. Not so much the stupid seashell photo. The stupid seashell photo, Trump is using I think he's using it as a distraction. This doesn't hold water. They can't, Tulsi's wrong. They cannot prosecute him for putting a photo of seashells. I don't care what numbers it spells. I don't think they can prosecute. There's no chance, because yes, he can say, I'm walking on the beach, I see these seashells and I take a photo. I didn't know what they were. It's very specious. Now they're trying to use it to distract from all the problems that they're having right now. Okay. But besides that point, what they really should be asking Comey, this has gotten swept under the rug. Comey orchestrated a complete lie, and he used national security. That Russiagate stuff that went on after, probably Comey and the others feel bad. They think, oh, well, we helped elect Trump. Now we have to, and by the way, they fear that Trump is such a bungling oaf. He's going to make enemies of our allies, all these things that they genuinely fear, that Trump is going to be a terrible president and he's going to hurt the United States. So guess what? Brennan, the CIA director, they actually do orchestrate a completely false campaign. That Russiagate thing that was begun, it was begun in more than one way. But it was begun largely with the Steele dossier. Complete lies. That's a political shenanigan that the Hillary Clinton people paid for. Complete lies in this Steele dossier. Comey goes on, and his successors go on to sign Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act surveillance things based on lies. And that's, by the way, swept under the rug by now. Yes, there's been an inspector general that found this was bad and lies, but that's it. And nothing ever happened because of this. And it wasn't just Comey. They actually also, besides the Steele dossier, they set up this intelligence. It wasn't the normal intelligence operation. In a normal intelligence assessment, they get all 16 of the intelligence agencies to sign off on, we think this, blah, blah, blah. We think the Russians have a missile, whatever it is. But they get 16 of them. In the case of Russiagate, with Comey and Brennan at the helm of this, they orchestrated it. And they handpicked analysts that they knew they were going to lie on this thing. And they didn't even call it the normal term. Now I can't remember what the normal term is, but they made up a term and made it look like it was an intelligence 16 agency, and it wasn't. It was like 3 agencies, the FBI, the CIA, and something else. And I think even the NSA balked a little bit on it. Anyway, so that's what, these are really the things that Comey should be questioned about now. Because again, this isn't over. And all of the people that were operating under Comey and McCabe in the FBI, like Strzok. Strzok did all this other stuff. He tried to entrap Flynn, and then they found out his emails with him and his lover at the time. His affair, he was having an affair, and these emails. Guess what? They're worse than the seashells. Those emails are saying we're taking Trump out. Between Strzok, and Strzok was like the 3rd or 4th high level in the FBI. And why was Strzok doing this with his attorney affair or whatever, who was also working for whatever high level? Why were they doing that? Because they all saw the green light from on high, from Comey. They knew that Russiagate was all lies. And so all these people were doing these really horrible things. And going back to your 86-47, it could just mean this is why there's no water. This will not, in court, Comey's lawyers would have a heyday, because it could just mean taking out someone. Well, when you're in a political campaign, obviously you want to take out your competition. It doesn't mean that they're actually assassinated. So the bottom line is, I think that poor Comey. I mean, again, poor Comey. And I will mention, Comey writes his defense of the picture of the seashells. His defense is, I oppose violence of any kind, so I took the post down. I about throw up in my hands. Guess who signed off on the torture program? Guess who signed off on all of these Iraqis and people rounded up in Guantanamo and waterboarding and all of these things? Guess who signed off on? Someone who opposes violence in all its forms. Unbelievable. But this is, people forgot. People don't even know that Comey, the partisans on the left who somehow now are on the side of Comey, because now Trump is going after Comey. So the partisan group on the left, that these would largely be the Cheney, the Bush 1 people who also hate Trump. So your Republicans, you're never Trump Republicans. Liz Cheney, who supported Kamala Harris, that group do a lot of things. By the way, they do a lot of manipulation and stuff, and they are definitely on Comey's side on this. And the thing I was saying is that people don't realize Comey signed off on the torture tactics. If he says I oppose violence in all its forms, they don't remember any of this history. That's even what it's 20 years old. It's about maybe 15 to 20 years old. People don't remember any of it. And we just go from one thing to the next. Now we know about Ukraine and Gaza, whatever. We forgot about the war on terror. That's all ancient history. Young people don't even know about it. But Comey was a main player in this. He was a main player in all of the Bush 1 horrible stuff that went on. And Mueller was too. Mueller lied in order to try to start the Iraq war. He lied, a million people died. Mueller testified that there was a link between Al-Qaeda, and he knew he was lying. And Comey, and they were all part of that first part of it. So we're seeing these sea changes with the change of party and power in Washington, but essentially the joke is on the people because very little changes.
No, but no, that's my point. Nothing is changing. The the faces in the high places change, but the game is the same. Nothing is changing.
No,
I mean,
nothing.
I'm concerned because you have you have these you have the establishment. Well, they're playing with our lives, but they're also in this political environment. Colleen Rowley, FBI, renowned FBI whistleblower, former time person of the year because of your courage in helping us to see some of what's happening in our own government. What they're not talking about, I mean, these people do not, in America, people do not trust the establishment and they do not trust our governing bodies and systems to the point where it's getting, people should be concerned.
Yes, absolutely.
Because there are questions about January, 6th? Okay, I get that. There are a lot of questions because there were a lot of different actors there. And the police were not there that day. And all Capitol Hill police and all there's okay. But when you listen to people calling into these talk shows on television and on radio, when you listen to people, there is a lot of ill will out here, Colleen Rowley. And there's a lot of disquiet. People are losing their jobs. People don't have any money. People are getting angrier and angrier and angrier. And I mean, and this could blow up in our faces, quite frankly. I mean, I think that, just these little signals that people throw out, because people don't go back 10 years, 20 years, although they should. They see a little something and they feel like, okay, this is the correct thing to do. To me, they're feeding a monster here. And that is very, very unsettling to me.
You know what happens when people are, when they're in a level of misery. So you mentioned lose your jobs, the price of eggs goes up, the insecurity of living in a situation where the economy is like the interest rate, the young people can't afford to even buy houses or even pay rent, on and on. So all of these factors are, they're somewhat similar to 9/11. Yeah. It traumatizes a population, a mass population. And, to be honest, if in fact if the United States' reserve dollar, which is always on the horizon, and that goes down, then a dollar turns into 30 cents. Can you imagine the instability in this country? It's bad enough when the price of eggs goes up, let alone if our dollar gets devalued. So Trump is doing all of these things.
Which means our dollar could be meaningless.
Well,
right?
30 cents is 30 cents. But this is what happened in the lead up to Hitler. In the lead up to Hitler, you had Germany that had signed, part of the Versailles Treaty, and they were being punished after World War I. And they ended up with these situations where their money was devalued. Remember the Great Depression, when that started, people were jumping out of buildings.
Yes.
These people who lost all of the big tycoons who lost their money in the stock market overnight jumped out of buildings.
Yes.
Obviously, very, very scary times. And when people are scared, when they are scared and when they are made more miserable and they're scared for themselves and their families, all kinds of bad things happen. Violence breaks out. One thing that tends to happen is scapegoating, because the person in power at the time is always going to point, the problem is this. Our money went down in value. And Hitler, of course, pointed to the Jews, and he pointed to other groups, the gypsies and the inferior classes, etc. So scapegoating is the way that a politician in power will try to maintain their power during some precarious times. And so going back to what I said, I think Trump is taking a lot of heat for different things, and rightly so in many cases. I just wrote up a piece about how we should get back to a checks and balances of the three branches of government, because Trump right now, and that's true, he's trying to, with executive orders and whatever, he is, even the courts are saying this, you are exceeding your lawful authority as the executive. I said he is actually following some of those John Yoo memos, using emergency powers during time of war. He's almost following it with the Alien Enemies Act. Okay, so he's taking heat for rightly so in some ways. And guess what? He does. He scapegoats. He's scapegoating Comey as, oh, he wants to assassinate me or whatever. So this is a big distraction. And when this happens, again, because people are in these partisan camps, I wish they wouldn't be. I wish people would say, oh, like me, it's complicated. It's complicated. Comey did a lot of bad things, whatever. He's no hero. And at the end of the day, do you really feel sorry for him that he gets caught in these political partisanship, different directions? And now he's trying to redeem himself by staging his photos. No, I mean, people said it's his tweets on X are so weird because he's 6'8". And, when we had that, remember Jimmy Stewart?
Yeah.
I mean, Jimmy Stewart, always cast this, and people, physical appearance is a big deal. When you have this stand up, ramrod straight, image, people think, oh, I can trust that person. Oh, that's just like Jimmy Stewart.
But he reminds you of Jimmy Stewart. He looks so earnest.
Yes. Yeah. I love Jimmy Stewart. I think Jimmy Stewart played an FBI agent, and that was all exaggerated. I mean, but John Wayne, Jimmy Stewart, they were picked because people ended up being branded as this image in their heads. And what Comey is trying to do now is he's trying to resuscitate a bit of legacy, that he didn't go down as this chump who was played by everyone. And actually he did some unlawful things. He leaked to the press about Trump. Now, all of those things that, again, got swept under the rug, because he leaked to the press. My friend John Kiriakou went to jail for 4 years, I think, nearly 4 years. And, all he did was out the torture program. And Comey was trying to fight against Trump. He leaked to a law professor friend who then leaked to the press. I mean, so this kind of thing, again, the people in power do all of these things that they later accuse that the torture programs the same way. Who do they pin the torture on? These low-level sergeants in Abu Ghraib and stuff. They pin it on those people, when in fact the orders were from the very top. They were from Cheney. They were from all the people at the top, the orders to torture. And that's how it happens in government. Now, going back to the partisanship, I wish people would take a moment just to say this is complicated. And, the seashell picture is Trump's trying to exploit the seashell picture. I don't think he's going to get, it doesn't hold water, except for his own base. His own base, thinks. And just let me mention, when a public official who has a following can include all kinds of radicals. So, in your following, you have some smart, good people, but you also have some loose cannons. Anytime you're in politics and you see the 2 assassination attempts on Trump, obviously one was for somebody who wanted to keep the Ukraine war going. And, and so they were on the other side. In Israel, Netanyahu, he was very vocal in his voicing opposition to the earlier prime minister who had signed the Oslo Peace Accords. And more than vocal, he practically called for his assassination. Netanyahu did this. And guess what? some crazy person does eventually assassinate.
Absolutely.
Was it Begin? I think it was Begin.
No,
Prime,
Rabin.
yeah. Who was it?
Rabin.
Rabin.
Mm-hmm.
When he is assassinated, yes, Netanyahu does deserve some of the blame, because if you're a public official and you are starting to go in this direction, and even if Comey didn't know what the seashells meant, when you start to go in that direction, you have to take some responsibility. During the lead up to the Republican National Convention in 2008 in St. Paul, we had a radio show guy. I do not remember his name. It was a right-wing radio show.
Mm-hmm.
And I happened to have it on. And I heard this guy, first of all, he was disparaging the protesters that were going to show up for the RNC. He was calling them names, patchouli hair thing. I mean, he was calling them all kinds of names. So then I listened, because I thought, oh, I'm going to be protesting the Republican National Convention, and I want to hear this. So he was calling names. He was interviewing some of the worst police officers. These are the heads of the union that want to crack heads, and they were talking about this. Well, we're going to keep them in line. The police officer didn't go to a certain line, but they'd say, well, we've got tanks coming. We've got armor. We've got tear gas, and we're going to keep those protesters in line. So they were saying that. Well, as soon as he hang up with that police officer, he would say, yeah, crack out the machine guns. And this is the radio show host. Yeah, open the boxes of the machine guns. Get out your axes. And I heard that and I went, whoa, that is a bit much, because he's a radio show host. He's got a lot of people listening. And guess what? There could be some unbalanced person who says, oh, I'm supposed to go take an axe to the protesters. And so I wrote a Huffington Post about it. And I had the clip. We got the clip of him saying it from the radio. And then guess what? Some of the advertisers on that radio show quit. And he later got fired. He didn't get fired immediately, but within a shorter while, that radio guy got fired. And you know what? That's wrong. There's a line between free speech. When you talked about the freedom of speech, I'm a big proponent of freedom of speech. Everything up to this line of inciting violence, and it's got to be imminent violence. So when you're there and you say you got a person in custody, a lynch mob has this young man and they're going towards the tree, and you say, hang him. You know what? Crosses the line. That's not freedom of speech. If you're somebody in power and you call for someone's assassination or whatever, that crosses the line. No freedom of speech. I would say J. Edgar Hoover's COINTELPRO, when they secretly wrote the letter to Martin Luther King Jr. and told him he should commit suicide, that crossed the line. I would say no freedom of speech on that kind of a thing. So when you start to really, really publicly encourage violence, imminent violence, that crosses the line. But everything up to that point, and I think the picture of the seashells is not going to even come close. Comey has a perfectly good thing. I didn't know what it meant. And, it was just there and I took the picture. I don't think there's any chance of this. Comey should be asked hard questions for his history and what he has done in this series of political things. And I'm going to make one more statement about Comey. Comey, when you're the FBI director, you have this lofty position where they all pretend, and in many cases it's true, that they're nonpartisan. And it started with J. Edgar Hoover. J. Edgar Hoover told a lot of people that he refused to vote because he did not want to show that the FBI was partisan. So that was an extreme. I don't know if it's true or not, but I've read that J. Edgar Hoover refused to vote even because he was so concerned about the FBI being seen as nonpartisan. And you know what? The directors we had the strictest version of the Hatch Act. We were not to wear a campaign button in the office, all kinds of the very serious restrictions on political partisanship in the FBI. And of course, the director can be seen as completely nonpartisan, even though they are appointed by a certain president one way or the other, but they are in this lofty, ether. They're in an ether where everybody looks up to them because Comey ended that. When he went against Trump and got fired by Trump, and then he solidly he campaigned for Kamala Harris, whatever. He's lost that integrity, I would say, or that ability to look as if he's just completely neutral. Mm-hmm. And so he's struggling. I think, Trump is seizing on Comey as struggling to look like he's a neutral law enforcement only. I don't care where the chips fall. I only care about law enforcement. And the truth is, Comey lost his neutrality. He lost his neutrality definitely after Trump was elected, big time. And now he's trying to, and then after, of course, when he went on Twitter, he was solidly, he went against Trump and everything. So,
well, I mean, as the FBI director and as a former FBI director, is it appropriate for him to weigh in politically? I mean, well, not politically, because politics, I think we conflate the terms in this. Politics is power, everybody, an allocation of resources. That's all. Okay. Partisanship is something else. And it's false because both the two major parties, oligarchy, corporatocracy, that's what they both protect. I mean, so I'm trying to find out what is appropriate, because I think that you can have your opinions and still seek to be fair.
The generals have had the same situation. And this started long, maybe 3 elections ago. Some generals declared themselves, Trump did this since 2016. When he had McMaster, he had those generals. Who was the other one? Oh, he became his chief of staff. I forget his name now. But anyways, who?
It escapes me.
Yeah. Well, he had a few generals, and of course, look, I have the generals. Why do you want generals? Why do you want an FBI, such officials to be in your camp? Because it carries the trust and the credibility of the people who believe that they were so wonderful and that they were protecting us and your law enforcement. So this started a few elections ago, where more and before that, it was considered a no-no for a general to go partisan, even after retirement. And you know what? Everyone knew. If you were close to those people, you probably did know their own opinions because they talked, but they didn't go public. And there probably still are some generals, and it's not just generals. It kind of goes down the I'm trying to think, colonels, the other one, the ones that go down a little further down the ranks. But many of the people I like to associate with in the veteran intelligence professionals for sanity, retired CIA, some retired military. None of us were high level, by the way. The Eisenhower media that I'm in right now too, with trying to think, Larry Wilkerson, Karen Kawatkowski. The highest is about colonel and right. The highest is about colonel level. And yes, but you know what? We try to stay issue oriented and not go completely partisan. There are times when people go more partisan, they kind of like show their true opinions of things, but we try to comment on the issues instead of on the person or on the party. And I think obviously the parties change, these things change all the time. Even your individuals change their minds.
Mhm.
We thought they promised they were against war, like Obama. I voted for Obama the first time, and literally he gets the Nobel Peace Prize, and then within a month he's surging the wars.
But
And you know
I
what?
don't know
This
why he
happens
got.
over and over.
But he got the Nobel Peace Prize before he done anything.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
it was an. I didn't understand that. I mean, but see, the thing is, I've up close and personal. I've seen my father have, when he walked in a room, people said, "I know where Jesse Jackson stands." But
Yeah.
Roger Ailes, of all people, said this to me. He's absolutely fair, and he does not hold a grudge. And if I tell him something, Santita, he's a tomb. He won't reveal it. And as you come into this space, follow his example, have integrity. He said that will carry you far. See, the thing is, I don't mind you. I've had people far right wing say, well, this is where I am. But, when they saw my brother Jesse in trouble, I mean, a Republican governor of the state of Illinois called my father and said, hey. He was one of the top, he was the principal at one of the top law firms in the world. He said, I didn't even know about this. Let me jump in and help him. Because I don't like what's happening to him. And I think it's unfair. And so I'm saying, I've seen people reach across the so-called partisan aisle. What is bothering me is there are no principles here, Colleen Rowley. I mean, it's just, I'm a Democrat. I'm going to side with the Democrats just because they don't have to be right. I'm going to side with the Republicans. They don't have to be right. I'm like, what are you doing? It's killing the country. It's killing us on so many levels. We're not going to survive this. I mean, we flipped. Now, whatever the CIA or the FBI says, Democrats are like, well, you got to trust them. Like, when did that happen? And now, and you've got some good people working all these agencies, and people have their political opinions in all these agencies, but they've also done a lot of things that have been awful. And it's like we've lost the ability to even say that. I mean, it just, and how can you get right if you cannot point out what is wrong?
That's
I mean,
right.
because I have to tell you, I really felt that his post was highly inappropriate. I do. Because 86, I don't know when they were putting it on the news, I was concerned with some other things, as I shared with you before I got on the air. So but 8647, it didn't really mean anything to me until I started reading about it, and I said, "Ooh, that's not good. That didn't make me feel good." And I find it hard to believe that the top cop in the country deals with crooks and thugs all the time and not know what 8 feet long, 6 feet under means, and 47. It's just, I mean, it's like, come on, that's unnecessary. You don't have to prove your point. You've shown yourself to be all over the place.
Yeah.
Would you just be fair now? I mean, leave that behind you. Do
Yeah.
you know what
And
I'm saying?
if Comey wants to do a sincere criticism of Trump, he does not lack he does not lack for material. He could, freedom of speech is a great example. Trump now is trying to say that the people protesting against genocide are terrorists. I mean, this goes so far-fetched. There's plenty for, if he wants to look like constitutional scholar, law enforcement, whatever, he does not lack for genuine. He didn't need.
There is so much material here, right?
I think, it's possible he thought it was cute that someone had made this thing out of seashells and thought it was a cute thing, possibly. And it's looking like his Twitter, like I said, he's trying to restore his legacy. So he's posting pictures of himself standing in the road, looking down the road, and writing these books. And what did Bush do after his legacy was ruined after Iraq and torture program? Bush Jr. What did Bush Jr. do after he left power?
Aside
He
from
pretends
painting,
that he's becoming a painter, like Churchill. Yeah, I'm Winston Churchill, and I'm going to paint. And so this is what it looks like. people in power, when they lose, like Winston Churchill is a great example too. I guess Winston Churchill did have some artistic talent. I don't know that Bush Jr. does have much, but Winston Churchill maybe did have some. But when you lose power, what are you going to do? You're going to take up a hobby. You're going to be like Clinton and ride on the Lolita Express. And, but I mean, honestly, Obama, the good life, Obama and Michelle, Barack Obama and Michelle, they're living the good life with parties and they're the toast of the town. I mean, so what do you do after you lose power? You can imagine that it's kind of unsettling. And also you're thinking, well, what are people going to remember me for?
Jimmy Carter.
Yeah,
he Sunday school and built some houses. What about
that's right.
Wait, negotiate peace. Look for fair elections. When you have been lifted that high into that position, to me, to whomever much is given, not much is expected, much is required. It is your obligation then to do what Jimmy Carter did. My father said in 1980, because he became his principal surrogate. That's how unpopular he was. He said I remember my father going out to the airport with him the Saturday before the election. I said, Daddy, what is it looking like? I couldn't vote yet. He said, he's going to lose and he's going to lose big. I said, oh no. He said, baby, I've never seen anything like this. They're treating him like the N-word. He said, I've never seen anything like it. He said, and he said this in the spring and he said it again in the fall, that Saturday. He said, when he leaves office, when he's put out, he will go on to become our most beloved president because he's fundamentally a decent man and you're going to see it. And he said it won't have any fanfare. Mm-hmm. But guess what? That's what we've seen. I don't object to you making your money or whatever. Okay. But you know what? At some point, the presidency should not be your come up. Okay. What Jimmy Carter did in really trying to give us a better world, that to me, that is not only what, I'm glad that he did it, but number one, that's what you ought to do. If you get that much, Colleen Rowley, my father told me, for all that my family been given, you have an obligation to give. To give. He said, you're not missing any meals. How many cars can you drive? How many outfits can you wear at one time? Santita? So before we go, I just need you to help me to understand what we're looking at, because I think we're off the rails here. I really do.
Santita, maybe we should write a book comparing the legacies and how those legacies of different presidents contrast with each other. That would make for a very interesting book because you just cited the honestly, when he died, he got honored really well. Carter. Carter. Hopefully Clinton doesn't get honored that much, but Carter, because of what he did afterward. And actually, I think that you see this playing out. John Yu's book that he wrote, again, he's all for Machiavellian exercise of power and power presidencies, all this. And his book is that the only legacies that we care about are the war presidents, beginning with Roosevelt and Washington, of course, George Washington, Lincoln, Roosevelt, Grant, whatever. So he writes that these are the ones that we put on the monuments, that we are only the war presidents. And I don't think that's exactly true, although with Washington and Lincoln it is. Reagan, for a long time, was enjoying a fantastic legacy. Mm-hmm. I think he's gone a little bit into forget now. I mean, it's not like, and also he didn't have much time after he left, just as Biden and Reagan are not going to have any time left to redeem themselves, because they were both senile with Alzheimer's and everything, dementia and whatever. And now Biden with his cancer, the cancer itself will help redeem Biden a little bit
That's what,
because
yeah.
it's already redeeming him because people cannot, McCain got redeemed because he died of cancer.
But I think we can walk and chew bubble gum at the same time, because I'm seeing that happen with Biden, and I'm like, really, in the midst of this discussion? No, I want him. I know God is a miracle worker. I know he can be healed. I certainly want him to have comfort, and I want his family to have comfort at this time, because I don't care what my disagreements with him have been politically. I would not wish illness on anyone, not at all. And so, and I've said that, I've been saying that, and I will hold to it. That having been said, what he did, not just to the Democratic Party, but to the country, was absolutely awful. And you can say both of those things, because they're absolutely true.
That's exactly what the point is. It's complicated, absolutely complicated. And, to point that out, we've taken a little over an hour here.
Okay.
And to point out
well, let me just say this: AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota, the Santita Jackson Show. Been talking with Colleen Rowley. AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota, the Santita Jackson Show, talking with Colleen Rowley about everything. There you go. I just have to open and close, but there we go. There you have it.
Yeah, good. All right.
No, but no, you tell me. What were you about to say?
Oh, that you're exactly right, that these things are complicated, and the way history gets written, we don't really have a lot of control over it. We have control over our own life and what we do now. And when we make mistakes, we're supposed to make amends. Well, we're not supposed to just keep going. Stop digging the hole. If you're digging, stop digging. At least try. We all make mistakes.
Yeah.
Carter made a very serious.
A lot of them.
Yeah, the Zbigniew Brzezinski chessboard kind of started all of this power drive and everything. He shouldn't have trusted Zbigniew Brzezinski.
Yeah.
But that I would say that was his biggest mistake.
Well, he got surrounded by the trilateralists, and that was it.
Yeah.
Because the same thing I would say even happened with Reagan. Because Reagan was someone who was anti-globalism. He was not a trilateralist. That's where Bush came in. And we know what happened. Let's be honest about it. I think because I believe in looking beyond all the stuff that we saw. I saw what he was pushing against, even though Reagan was someone who, quite frankly, was a frightening figure.
Yeah, but Reagan did some good things, and Nixon opened up China, with even Kissinger did a little bit of good, and I even said this about J. Edgar Hoover. I mean, J. Edgar Hoover did a lot of bad things. However, I think his idea about getting fingerprints in order to identify killers and whatever, I think that was his genius. You can attribute the fingerprint classification to J. Edgar Hoover. Okay, he did a good thing. So it's none of this. The scapegoating is the problem, because we got to make everything good or evil, and by and large, everything is a mixed bag. And people should stay on the issues, and not on the person. Don't trust any politician. Don't fully trust any person in power. I put that on my email. The power is it's a quote by Edward Abbey. Power is very dangerous.
Yes,
it attracts the worst, and it corrupts the best. And I'm just going to end with that. It's very, very powerful, because power itself, we always know how, absolute power corrupts, whatever. That quote about power is dangerous because it attracts the worst, people who are power hungry, i.e. the Clintons, whatever. It attracts the worst, but it also corrupts the best.
Absolutely.
And I think, and even your Roman Caesars, they all knew that power corrupts. I mean, this has been known for a long time. They would have people whispering in their ears and stuff when they were taking their glory rides. The truth is, people should stay on the issues. genocide right now. I'm gonna end. We're starting a fast a national fast all over the country, led by a lot of peace groups. But here locally, it's our Vets for Peace, and we're gonna fast for 40 days.
Really?
So yeah, yep,
When
and
does this begin?
it starts this Thursday. There are groups of very committed, pacifist, Catholic workers. I don't even know the groups that are so committed are going to stay contained. They're going to be like in a certain place, giving each other, comfort, whatever. But they're going to do an absolute complete fast, only water for 40 days. I'm worried because I'm overweight. And I told the Vet for Peace who asked me if I would participate, I said, you guys be careful because I know that I'm overweight and I can probably go for 40 days.
No.
But I know a lot of skinny people that can't make it. And
Even if you're overweight, my mother went on a fast when she was arrested in Vieques and she only had water. And she became gravely ill.
Yeah, it's very dangerous. It's very dangerous.
It's very dangerous.
Well, that's why Israel is starving. They are killing now thousands of children. The worst death, the cruelest death you can imagine, starving children. And they're laughing about it. They've got the United States and essentially all of the Arab world not able to do anything. Well, the United States doesn't want to do anything. And they're on the side of this starvation. Trump, he says things sometimes like it should end. I am hoping that we don't go 40 days. I'm hoping that something happens. It might be that all of them finally perish. It's this 11th hour at this point. There is it's so horrible right now in Gaza. And then Israel is continuing into the rest of the Palestinian West Bank. They're continuing. So they haven't been stopped. And so this is continuing. So a lot of us are just desperate. I will just say this is desperate, that it is dangerous, especially to people who are skinny. You do have to take vitamins and liquid. And some of us, there's also, some of us are going to have 250 calories because that's the amount of calories that now that we think are left per person in Gaza. 250 calories a day, which is basically a bite of food. It's not much.
Nothing.
Anyway, so we'll see what happens. But I'm announcing it here in Minnesota, but it's all over the country that different groups are going to start fasting for 40 days. And it could be like Ramadan, where you don't eat during the daytime. There's different forms of this that you fast all day long, but then you can eat a little bit, afterwards. And that's safer for most people. Ramadan is a safer thing. It's an intermittent thing. But yeah, we'll see what happens.
Well, just let everyone know that you have a home on this show as you talk about that fast, because they do have lots of pictures of these children and people and adults who are starving and they're being denied water and food. Everybody.
Yes, exactly.
Water and
yes.
food. I've never seen anything so cruel in my lifetime, although I know what we've done to indigenous people in the United States. Horrifying. What we did to enslaved people, that was no picnic in the United States. What King Leopold did in the Congo, horrifying. I mean, what's happening, just when will we learn? Mm-hmm. But this is something that you can see in social media right now, as you're watching people look to make Gaza a new Riviera. The fact is, it was a Riviera before the Nakba. This was one of the most beautiful places on earth until all of this happened. People went there for a vacation. It was absolutely beautiful. This is not a religious war, everybody. This is a political war. This is about land and power. That's what this is. So stop all of this. Can Jewish people and Muslims and Christians get along. Get out of here. That's not what this is about. This is about land and resources that are under that land or adjacent to it.
It's the same thing that happened to the indigenous Indian population.
Absolutely.
The settlers wanted the land and they pushed them and pushed them. They violated all the treaties, pushed them on the Trail of Tears, and they died marching in sub-zero cold. I mean, on the genocides are not new. It has happened in history before. The Holocaust, it's happened, but I can't believe, I honestly, every time I think about it, the good people of the world now have to do something, because this is really horrible, and we have exhausted a lot. We filed last week. We filed our taxpayers against genocide lawsuit in Minnesota, and I was like the lead plaintiff on it. So we did that too. We filed against all of our congresspersons and 2 senators, with the exception of Ilhan Omar, who voted against arming Israel. All of ours, Democrat, Republican, not political, Democrat, Republican. In fact, the worst one is my Congresswoman, Angie Craig, who is a Democrat, and she is completely over with the Israelis. She has voted with the Republicans every time, and to arm Israel, and is in favor of the genocide, blah, blah, blah. So we filed a lawsuit on last Monday, and we have an official document that at least when we get up to the pearly gates and they say, "What did you do?" I'm going to say, "Oh, we filed a lawsuit. We went on a fast. We were thinking of everything." I tried to go on the Gaza flotilla. We're trying to think of everything we can do as being a part of the problem, because the United States is part of this problem. We're the ones arming Israel. And I know when we filed the lawsuit, we had our big banner that said "Stop the Genocide." We had a lot of people that came up to us, just said, "I agree." And one of the signs said "Stop arming Israel." And a lot of people pointed to it and said, "Yes, you're right. You're right." And so there is a large majority of people in the United States, but we just can't get our leaders. We just cannot get through to the leaders that this is so wrong. It is so wrong and illegal. Anyway, this is the next thing we're going to try is going on a fast. So,
well, you know what? Let me know, because people need to talk about it. I would love to have you all on the Keep Hope Alive show on the weekend on Sunday, the nationally syndicated show that we have. But I also would love to have you all on this show to talk about it. And I would like to get John Kiriakou on.
Yeah.
I would love to get him on, but I'd love to have you all in conversation. I think I would just holler.
I'm gonna ask the Vets for Peace. They're
Please.
the ones. Yeah, I'll ask our Vets for Peace here and see if they'll come on. That sounds good.
Let them. I mean, if they're available tomorrow in the run up to it, because people who want to be involved and who want to support, I mean, any way that we could, because I want to support. I really, really do want to support. Because maybe you won't do the whole 40-day fast. Maybe you'll fast for a day. Yes. Maybe people can do a handoff and establish like what we call the prayer circles, where people can do that. I'll do that, and then you pick up from me, and we can. I think there are so many ways that we can have solidarity, because we're the ones who can make this change. Because indeed, it is we who have changed our minds about what's happening over there, who've been making the change thus far. But I have to thank you for all of your work and for your clarity. Thank you for rising above partisanship. Really, that means so much, because I'm not a partisan. I'm against poverty. I'm for love. I'm for justice. I'm for liberty. I'm for fairness. I'm for free and responsible speech. I'm for funding people to be educated academically, vocationally, artistically, whatever your gifts are. I think you ought to be allowed to flower as God sent you here to do. I think that all of this money that we're spending on war, Colleen Rowley, Dr. King said that if we spend more on war than we do on spiritual uplift, we're going to spiritually die. That's where we are. So that's where I am with this. And I want to thank you for being some reliably someone who I can call who's going to say, look, let's tease out all of the noise. You don't come to me as a Democrat. You don't come to me as a Republican. You come to me as a human being who loves people and who loves our country and who loves the world. And I thank you for that. That's all I can ask. That's it. That's all. And you're not overweight. You look fabulous. If you want to, please, as we get older, you start losing too much weight. It hits your face. You don't want to do that. So you look great. You look great. Just but take your vitamins, please. That's what you need. Okay, because when you do these fasts, vitamins are important. And so I'm going to connect you to this woman who is a great herbalist here. Maybe there's some things that you can do while you're fasting. So let me connect it to you, okay? Because she's a tremendous, tremendous woman who, in fact, the person who trained Dick Gregory as he moved into fasting, that was Dr. Alvenia Fulton. This young woman is in that tradition because Dr. Alvenia Fulton was here. Many of you don't remember. Dick Gregory used to be overweight, and he fasted his way into wellness, and that's what he came to do. So I'm going to connect this woman to you so that you can pass this on to others and who are going to be fasting, so that they can be well. That's important. But I love you, Colleen Rowley. I just think you are the best. I think you're just the best. The best, the best, the best.
Well, thanks again for having me, and good luck on everything.
Oh, look, I'm all good. God bless you, everybody. AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota.